If you've played either of the Red Dead Redemption games, you know of the Linde Gang, or as the general public called them, Dutch's Boys. But do you know the whole story? Well, if you don't, I invite you to sit down, grab a snack, and discover the history of the Linde Gang. Dutch van der Linde left his home in 1870 to become an outlaw. In 1877, a 22-year-old Dutch met Hosea Matthews at a campfire. Hosea, a con man, tried to swindle Dutch, only to realize that Dutch had robbed him while he tried to con the outlaw. The two shared a laugh over the incident and became best friends. This was the moment they founded the van der Linde Gang. Dutch convinced Hosea that if they robbed from the rich and gave to the poor, they could get redemption for their crimes. So the pair would only rob the people who deserved it. In one such case, the pair were arrested in Kettering, Ohio, for selling fake shares of a Portuguese trading company. On March 9, 1877, the pair escaped their cell and even found a way to strip the sheriff who had brought them in. During this time, the gang began to expand, as Hosea's wife Bessie, Arthur Morgan, and Susan Grimshaw all joined. The gang at this time was as close as family. Bessie even taught Arthur how to play dominoes, while Hosea and Dutch taught him to read. In 1885, Dutch discovered John Marston, and he became the next member of the gang. He and Arthur were like brothers, and later, many said John was Dutch's favorite. In 1887, the gang had its first big heist and robbed a bank. Hosea, Dutch, and Arthur held up a bank and ended up making $5,000 in gold. During this robbery, Dutch made a very interesting statement. "My fine patriotic friends and I are going to relieve you of some of that gold and introduce a few folks to the benefits of civilization." This proved the gang had good intentions. From that point to 1899, the gang robbed 37 banks. At some point during this time, Dutch had met a woman named Annabelle, and they fell in love. He also met Colm O'Driscoll and his gang. The pair made a truce, which ended badly as Dutch killed Colm's brother. Colm then killed Annabelle in retaliation. That began the feud between these rival gangs. As time went on, the gang began to steer away from its Robin Hood style of crime and became much more sinister. Dutch allowed Leopold Strauss into the gang, and he would ruin many lives with his loans. The gang also began to kill, much to the horror of Hosea. Over time, the gang began to gain many new members. In the early 1890s, Mac and Davy Callender, Karen Jones, Mary Beth Gaskill, Tilly Jackson, Simon Pearson, Reverend Swanson, Uncle, Sean McGuire, Hosea Trelawney, and Molly O'Shea all joined. In 1894, Bill Williamson and Abigail Roberts joined. Abigail was a prostitute, and according to Dutch, they all had her, but John won her. She and John had a son in 1895 named Jack. Young Jack had many aunts and uncles in the gang, but sadly not a father for his early years, as John left the gang, but came back 1 year later. Also in 1895, Javier Escuela joined the van der Linde Gang. In 1898, Lenny Summers, Charles Smith, Jenny Kirk, and Micah Bell joined the gang. Also in 1899, we see the events of Red Dead Redemption 2. We know that the gang had a major setback at Blackwater, which sent them on the run from Pinkerton detective agents. The gang camped all over Amberino, New Hanover, and Lemoyne to evade the pursuers. While in Amberino, Sadie Adler was rescued from the O'Driscolls and became a fundamental part of the gang. They also added Kieran Duffy, a former O'Driscoll. At the time of Blackwater, the gang had a few members die, including both the Callender brothers and Jenny. While on the run, the gang settled temporarily in Rose, Lemoyne, where they got involved in two families' disputes, the Braithwaites and the Grays. This ended up causing the death of Sean and the kidnapping of Jack Marston. The gang get Jack back from Angelo Bronte, but Bronte had evil intentions for the gang, and he used Dutch. He caused the gang to fail at a robbery of a train station at Saint Denis. This failure drives Dutch to plan a large-scale robbery of a bank in Saint Denis. The robbery is a colossal failure, as Hosea and Lenny are killed. John is arrested, and Dutch, Arthur, Micah, Javier, and Bill are stranded on a Caribbean island after their escape boat capsized. While Dutch is gone on Guarma, Sadie Adler leads the gang. The failed robbery was the beginning of the end for the van der Linde Gang. After returning from Guarma, Micah strikes a deal to be an informant for the Pinkertons, while he also fills the place of Hosea for Dutch. This causes Dutch to spiral away from his once Robin Hood ideology and causes many of the members of the gang to leave. Micah frames Molly Osei as she is drunk and tried to turn on the gang, but according to Detective Milton, she didn't give up enough information. Molly is killed by Susan Grimshaw for her treason. Eventually, Arthur discovers that Micah is the mole, and when he accuses him, it splits the gang. Micah, Javier, and Bill stay loyal to Dutch, while Arthur and John do not. But while this dispute occurs, Pinkertons attack, Arthur and Micah fight, and Dutch begins to realize his mistake, and leaves Micah and the others, while Arthur dies. All the surviving members go their separate ways, save for Abigail and John, who get married in 1907. The same year, Sadie finds John, and they go with Charles to confront Micah to avenge Arthur. But when Micah gets the upper hand, Dutch shows up, and he and John kill Micah. John, Sadie, and Charles discover the remaining hull from Blackwater and split it. After that, they all go their separate ways one more time. But Uncle moves in with John. After that, the events of Red Dead Redemption transpire, and in 1911, John hunts down Bill, Javier, and Dutch to save Abigail and John. While the player is given the option to spare Javier, John kills Bill, and Dutch commits suicide. The government ends up killing John and Uncle as well. Abigail dies in 1914, and Jack ends up continuing his father's legacy. And thus, that's all we know of the Linde Gang. Well, that's all for today. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.